What if the ones you'd stake your soul on, those unshakable pillars of goodness, the heroes you'd swear could never falter, morphed into shadows you barely recognize, their halos swapped for horns in a blink? Imagine your rock, your beacon of virtue, unraveling into a monster, a twist so wild it claws at your trust, leaving you stunned and scrambling for answers. Stoicism throws a stark light on this. Circumstances don't carve your character, they peel it bare. Under the crush of life's unseen grind, a whisper of greed, a shove of fear, even the purest can tumble from grace to grim, blind to the beast they've become. Here's the shiver down your spine. Could that darkness lurk in you too? Every day's a quiet crucible, a slick temptation, a tiny just this once, a pressure that coils so tight you don't see the snap coming. Those cracks don't roar, they creep, turning good hearts into gnarled wrecks before the mirror even flinches. Stoicism isn't here to preach. It's here to probe, slicing through the haze to show why saints sour into sinners and how you can brace against that slide. This isn't some distant why, it's your frontline how, a no-holds-barred look at the triggers that twist the best of us into the worst. Stick close. Today's video rips open the gears that grind good people into monsters and arms you with stoic grit to hold your ground. If you're ready to face the shadows and keep your core steady, hit like to spark this hunt, share it with someone teetering on their own edge, sub to Victory Stoic to snag these raw revelations, and slam, I'm digging in the comments, then drop it. What's one fall from grace that's haunted you? Good doesn't rot by chance. Let's uncover why, right now. Number 1, the influence of social pressure. How good people lose their moral compass. One of the most powerful and subtle forces shaping human behavior is social pressure. Even the best among us, those with a firm sense of right and wrong, can find their moral compass distorted when faced with a collective influence. We often believe we're immune, that we'd stand firm in our values no matter the circumstances, but history, psychology, and everyday life consistently show us otherwise. Take, for instance, the haunting example of Nazi Germany. The widespread atrocities committed during the Holocaust were not merely carried out by monstrous individuals inherently bent on evil, but also by ordinary, seemingly decent people who surrendered their moral judgment to collective pressure. Researchers like psychologist Stanley Milgram highlighted this troubling reality in his groundbreaking 1960s experiments on obedience. Milgram demonstrated that average, kind-hearted people were disturbingly willing to administer electric shocks to strangers simply because an authority figure urged them to do so. In his experiments, 65% of participants obediently administered severe electric shocks, even when convinced they were causing significant harm, just because an authoritative figure in a lab coat told them it was necessary. This experiment unveiled a troubling truth. Social pressure and obedience could overpower personal ethics with alarming ease. Similarly, psychologist Solomon Ash's studies on conformity further reveal how easily individuals abandon their principles under social influence. Participants in his experiments intentionally gave obviously wrong answers to simple visual tests just to align with the group's incorrect responses. The reason? Fear of standing out or appearing foolish. Even something as straightforward as recognizing line lengths became distorted by the power of collective opinion, showing how quickly people compromise their sense of truth to fit in. But social pressure is not confined to dramatic historical examples or laboratory experiments. It silently influences our everyday lives. Consider a modern, relatable scenario. You join a new company and quickly notice that everyone subtly participates in dishonest practices, perhaps inflating expense reports slightly or ignoring minor ethical violations. Initially, your internal compass protests, but soon you rationalize your complicity, telling yourself, everyone does it, so it must be acceptable. Slowly, without clear awareness, you've become complicit in actions that contradict your core values, simply because the environment normalizes such behavior. Or take the common example of gossip among friends. You might usually be kind-hearted and empathetic, but when surrounded by a group who casually mocks someone else, you laugh along, not because you're malicious, but because it feels socially uncomfortable to stand apart. Gradually, these seemingly minor incidents chip away at your moral clarity, eroding the boundary between right and wrong. These examples illustrate how social pressure doesn't often appear overtly coercive. Rather, it subtly reshapes perceptions, convincing you that conformity, even unethical conformity, is safer, easier, or more acceptable than standing alone. Stoicism offers us powerful insights here. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one." This quote serves as a clear reminder. Morality isn't defined by majority opinion or convenience. True virtue lies in the courage to maintain integrity, especially when society tempts you to compromise. Therefore, recognizing how susceptible we are to social pressure is the first crucial step in preventing ourselves from drifting into moral darkness. By consistently questioning our choices, cultivating self-awareness, and staying aligned with Stoic principles, we can ensure our ethics remain strong, even when the world around us wavers. Stoic insight: you don't become virtuous by following the crowd. You become virtuous by standing firm when others lose their way. Marcus Aurelius. Number 2. The influence of power. How Stoicism protects your inner virtue. Power is often portrayed as the ultimate test of character. While we commonly believe that positions of authority will allow good individuals to enact positive change, reality frequently paints a darker picture. Unchecked power can transform compassionate, kind-hearted individuals into cold, indifferent, or even ruthless people. This troubling transformation isn't something reserved only for politicians or historical figures. It occurs in workplaces, relationships, families, and countless daily scenarios. How then do we ensure we maintain our deep-seated virtues and purity of character when confronted with power? First, consider the psychological findings demonstrated by the Stanford Prison Experiment led by psychologist Philip Zimbardo in 1971. Participants were randomly assigned roles of prisoners or guards. Within days, otherwise kind and ordinary individuals who received unchecked authority quickly descended into cruelty, humiliation, and abuse. The conclusion drawn from this study was clear. Without ethical grounding or clear boundaries, the possession of authority and dominance can rapidly erode empathy and moral sensitivity. But here lies the critical role of Stoicism, an ancient philosophy uniquely equipped to combat this moral corruption by guiding us to handle power with profound humility, responsibility, and self-awareness. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic emperor who wielded immense power yet retained remarkable compassion and virtue, provides an enduring example. He repeatedly reminded himself in his personal journals, "Remember, you are merely human." This Stoic practice teaches us to consistently question ourselves, to reflect on our thoughts and actions, and to hold ourselves accountable, particularly when granted authority. Epictetus also highlights this principle clearly, stating, "Freedom is not achieved by satisfying desires, but by eliminating them." Power often inflames our egos and desires, making us hungry for validation, control, or dominance. The Stoics warn us against becoming slaves to these impulses. Instead, they encourage us to constantly evaluate our motives. Am I using power for self-serving gain or genuinely seeking to benefit and uplift others? By routinely examining our intentions through self-reflection, journaling, or meditation, practices deeply advocated by Stoicism, we remain grounded, conscious, and virtuous. A practical illustration of this philosophy is seen in daily leadership. Imagine you're promoted at work and now manage a team. Initially, the praise, respect, and privileges accompanying your new role can be intoxicating. Without reflection, it's easy to begin expecting special treatment, subtly slipping into indifference toward those beneath you. A Stoic response is intentionally to remember your core virtues daily: justice, fairness, courage, and wisdom, and let these values govern your decisions. You consciously treat your team with compassion and respect, reminding yourself that power is merely a tool to serve others better, not an entitlement to dominate or control them. Moreover, Seneca advises regular reflection through journaling or meditation on questions such as, am I exercising power for the common good or merely for my ego? Such intentional reflections serve as a powerful checkpoint, keeping one's moral compass consistently aligned. Furthermore, Stoicism emphasizes cultivating gratitude, humility, and empathy as regular habits. Practicing daily gratitude for opportunities to serve, rather than dominate, reorients our relationship to power. Humility prevents arrogance from taking root, ensuring we see power as a responsibility, not a privilege. And empathy reminds us that authority should be used to uplift others, not diminish their dignity. Ultimately, power itself is neutral. It doesn't inherently corrupt us. Rather, it acts as a magnifier, exposing the depths of our character. Through the lens of Stoicism, we clearly see that maintaining virtue amid power isn't accidental. It requires disciplined practice, continual reflection, and an unwavering commitment to core values. By embodying the Stoic virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control, we not only shield ourselves from the corrupting influences of power, but we also inspire others toward goodness, purity, and true strength. Remember, as Marcus Aurelius powerfully stated, waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one. By embracing this timeless wisdom, you can confidently wield power not as a force that corrupts, but as a sacred trust that elevates everyone around you. Number 3. The illusion of no one will ever know. How Stoicism can guide you to integrity. We've all experienced that tempting whisper, "No one's watching, so what's the harm?" This seemingly innocent thought quietly encourages good-hearted people to compromise their values, leading to behavior they'd never openly admit. The sense of anonymity can subtly persuade even the most morally upright among us to stray from the path of virtue. Picture this everyday scenario. You're walking late at night, the street's empty and quiet. You accidentally bump into a parked car, leaving a noticeable scratch. A quick glance around, no one witnessed it. What do? You could leave unnoticed. After all, no one saw you, no consequences, no awkward confrontation. But what happens inside your mind is critical. The inner voice whispers reassuringly, "Nobody saw, it's fine." Yet deep down, you know what's right. But under the cloak of darkness, temptation grows. Stoicism provides a powerful framework for confronting exactly these types of ethical challenges. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one." To the Stoics, morality isn't determined by external surveillance, but by internal accountability. Virtue must remain intact even when there's nobody watching, precisely because integrity is about who we choose to be when no one else sees. Another relatable example is the workplace. Perhaps you're working remotely, managing your own schedule with minimal oversight. No one checks whether you're truly productive during those working hours. The temptation to slack off or misuse company resources arises easily when supervision disappears. Many otherwise diligent employees may rationalize their actions by thinking, "It's harmless, no one will notice." Yet, this subtle shift, believing unethical actions have no consequence if unseen, begins to erode your character and self-respect. Epictetus teaches us, character is built through small decisions made consistently when no one is watching. For Stoics, your self-respect isn't determined by praise or blame from others, but by whether your actions align with your highest principles, even when completely alone. Epictetus reminds us, whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself, what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? This introspective habit reinforces integrity, reminding us that ethics and virtue are inward-driven rather than outward-imposed. To further strengthen your inner compass, Stoics recommend imagining you are always watched by someone you deeply admire. A moral mentor, perhaps Marcus Aurelius or Seneca themselves. This practice serves as a vivid reminder that you are your own judge, always accountable to your highest self. Imagine, for instance, if someone you respect deeply observed your every action. Would you still make the same choices? Modern psychology also validates the Stoic approach through the concept of the spotlight effect. Although we often feel unnoticed, Stoicism encourages flipping this perspective. Act as if your life is a constant lesson in virtue to others, regardless of who's watching or not. Your behavior thus becomes a beacon of integrity, effortlessly guiding your daily decisions. Additionally, incorporating nightly reflections, reviewing your day with honesty and courage, can help break the illusion of anonymity. Ask yourself daily, did I live in accordance with my principles today? This simple yet profound Stoic practice restores your moral awareness, ensuring that your values remain intact whether seen or unseen. In summary, Stoicism equips us with tools to confront the seductive illusion that wrongdoing is harmless when hidden. By anchoring our morality in internal standards rather than external validation, we develop unwavering strength and clarity of purpose. Your virtue, cultivated in silence and solitude, eventually becomes your greatest source of strength and pride. So next time temptation whispers, remind yourself, virtue isn't about what others see, it's about who you choose to be when no one else is watching. Number 3, avoiding responsibility. Why good people compromise their integrity. When we think, it's not my responsibility, we unconsciously grant ourselves permission to act against our values. This mindset erodes morality, turning even the kindest people into passive participants in wrongdoing. Imagine this relatable scenario. You're scrolling through TikTok or Instagram and see someone being publicly shamed or cyberbullied. Instead of stepping in or reporting the issue, you think, this isn't my battle, and keep scrolling. Deep down, you know something feels off, but you rationalize that others will handle it. This bystander effect thrives because responsibility feels distant, diluted, or simply not yours. Stoicism addresses this directly. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, what is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. Your integrity isn't just about avoiding wrongdoing personally, but also about refusing passive complicity when seeing injustice around you. True virtue requires actively stepping up, even when uncomfortable. Consider an example. On social media platforms, harmful trends sometimes go viral. Remember TikTok challenges that encourage risky behaviors, such as dangerous pranks or bullying disguised as humor? Many decent people participate or passively support these trends, laughing along without critically reflecting. Why? Because everyone else is doing it, or they think they're just observers, not active participants. Yet, each share, like, or laugh quietly normalizes harmful behavior. Epictetus offers clear guidance here. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things beyond our control and taking full responsibility for things within our power. You can't control others, but you can control your actions and reactions. Standing firm and refusing to passively endorse harmful trends, even subtly, asserts your moral agency and courage. Ultimately, Stoicism encourages you to see responsibility not as a burden, but as empowerment. Taking personal accountability, even in small ways, builds character. Each time you refuse to shift blame, justify poor behavior, or become passive, you strengthen your inner virtue. Next time you scroll through TikTok, Instagram, or workplace chats, and something ethically questionable arises, pause and remember, your responsibility doesn't vanish just because you're part of the crowd. Stoicism calls on you to rise above, step up, and clearly say, I choose virtue regardless of who's watching. Your virtue isn't someone else's responsibility, it's yours alone. Number 4, dehumanization. Losing sight of humanity, losing yourself. At the heart of every cruelty, every injustice, lies a tragedy more profound than violence itself, the loss of seeing another person as truly human. When we cease to view someone as a living, breathing individual with hopes, fears, and dreams, our conscience becomes blurred, and our kindness diminishes. It's not hatred alone that drives cruelty, but rather the subtle, silent denial of another's humanity. Even the purest hearts can fall prey to this shadow, forgetting the goodness that connects us all. Have you ever found yourself caught in anger or resentment, momentarily seeing someone as merely an obstacle rather than a person? Have you ever, in your pain or frustration, forgotten that behind every face lies a story just as vivid and meaningful as your own? Perhaps you've lost trust in the innate goodness that exists in the world, doubting the very things you once believed passionately. Or maybe you've experienced a moment of bitterness so overwhelming that kindness seemed foolish, and virtue felt distant, unreachable. We all have. History is littered with tragic stories where ordinary, decent people were consumed by the darkness of dehumanization. From distant battlefields to everyday neighborhoods, good individuals became blind to the humanity of others. Soldiers once filled with kindness and compassion have committed unimaginable acts when convinced their enemies were less than human, mere targets rather than lives. In quieter ways, societies have justified cruelty by labeling entire groups as the other, stripping away their humanity until empathy vanished. This denial led good neighbors to ignore injustice, to silently accept brutality, believing such acts were justified against people no longer seen as truly human. Yet you must ask yourself this with absolute honesty. Do you believe in the goodness of humanity? Do you believe in your own goodness? Have you ever been lost in your own resentment, in pain, blinded by disappointment or betrayal, slowly forgetting the essential goodness in the world and within you? The Stoics warn us of precisely this danger. They teach that virtue isn't sustained by convenience, but by constant vigilance and unwavering discipline. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, whenever you're about to find fault with someone, remind yourself of your own imperfections. By recognizing our shared imperfections, we remember our shared humanity. This humility keeps your heart open, preventing you from slipping into the dangerous belief that anyone else is less human, less deserving of compassion. Stoicism guides us back to virtue by demanding we recognize the humanity in others, no matter how deeply wounded or angry we feel. It's about seeing the intrinsic value of every person, even those who've wronged us. It's about holding steadfastly to what's noble, even when the world tempts you toward hatred. It reminds us that true strength lies not in our anger or dominance, but in our unwavering commitment to empathy and integrity. So, how do you stay firmly rooted in virtue amid life's relentless storms? Stoicism offers a timeless answer. Reflect daily on the humanity of others, acknowledge their struggles, their pains, and their hopes. Remind yourself constantly that beneath each face, no matter how difficult, is someone not unlike you, longing for happiness, acceptance, and understanding. When you practice seeing others clearly, you reclaim your virtue and your clarity. You find your way back, no longer lost in the shadows, but guided by compassion, resilience, and unshakable faith in the beauty of human connection. Ultimately, you stand at a crossroads every day, every moment, choosing between darkness and light, cruelty and compassion, blindness or clarity. Stoicism calls you to remember who you are, to hold fast to virtue, and never again lose sight of the goodness within yourself and the world. You are better than the darkness. Choose clarity. Choose compassion. Choose virtue. Number 5. The language of deception. How words mask our true actions. In the quiet corners of your mind, you know the truth. You've always known the truth. Yet sometimes, when faced with discomfort or temptation, you choose softer words to justify your actions. You say you're just borrowing something when you're actually taking it without permission. You call a hurtful comment just joking around, masking the pain you've inflicted. Slowly, without realizing, the language you use becomes your shield, protecting you from the sharp edges of guilt and accountability. Words become your cloak, your mask, transforming wrong into right, darkness into something palatable, allowing good people like yourself to wander astray without ever fully confronting the truth. This subtle transformation of language is a timeless and dangerous form of self-deception, turning unacceptable actions into something easily digestible. History offers countless examples. Governments describe wars as peacekeeping missions. Violent attacks become preemptive strikes, and innocent civilian deaths are softened into collateral damage. These terms do not merely rephrase reality, they deliberately reshape it, blinding society, and even ourselves, from acknowledging the true consequences of our actions. Psychologists refer to this phenomenon as moral disengagement by renaming harmful actions in gentle, neutral, or even positive terms. We psychologically distance ourselves from guilt and responsibility. You may have personally experienced this when you're tempted to cheat, steal, or gossip. Actions clearly wrong become comfortably blurred as you rename them as taking shortcuts, just joking, or venting. Each softened term slowly chips away at your inner integrity, making it easier to justify further compromises down the road. Stoicism, however, provides powerful protection against this linguistic trap. Marcus Aurelius cautioned, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Stoicism urges radical honesty, not only with others, but also with yourself. By acknowledging reality openly, clearly, without distortion or euphemism, you preserve your inner moral compass. You keep your actions aligned with your deepest principles, refusing to let linguistic gymnastics obscure what's genuinely right. Epictetus reinforces this point sharply. First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. The Stoic path doesn't tolerate half-truths or rationalizations. Instead, it challenges you to confront yourself clearly and honestly, every single day. Ask yourself, have you recently sugarcoated an action to feel less guilty? Have you labeled a harmful habit as harmless, allowing your conscience to drift slowly but surely away from integrity? Think of a practical daily example. Perhaps you spend too much time scrolling mindlessly on social media, calling it taking a quick break, when in reality, you're deliberately avoiding essential tasks. This seemingly harmless act, repeated day after day, gradually corrodes your sense of discipline and clarity, leaving you feeling hollow and directionless. Stoicism calls you back to reality, urging you to face uncomfortable truths without fear. You must bravely strip away deceptive language, confronting yourself with raw honesty. Doing so isn't easy, but it's essential. Only by clearly naming your actions can you control them and maintain your virtue. Remember, you are not defined by moments of weakness or error, but you will be shaped by how honestly you face them. Choose clear words, embrace reality, and speak truthfully to yourself. In clarity, there is strength. In strength, there is virtue. Choose the courage to be clear, because clarity is the only path back to the goodness and purity you truly seek. Number 6. The poison of toxic environments. How surroundings can corrupt good people. Sometimes good people aren't corrupted because of their intentions, but simply because they find themselves immersed in a toxic environment. Imagine your values as a strong fortress built from stone. Even the most solid structure can crumble slowly if it's constantly exposed to corrosive influences. No matter how virtuous or strong-willed you are, the wrong surroundings, filled with negativity, manipulation, or deceit, will gradually erode your sense of right and wrong. History provides vivid examples of how toxic influences have toppled kingdoms and corrupted wise leaders. In ancient royal courts, cunning advisors often employed psychological manipulation to gain power. They whispered rumors and lies about loyal and honest ministers into the king's ears, slowly but persistently. Over time, these subtle whispers planted doubt, suspicion, and paranoia in the ruler's heart. Trusted ministers who spoke honestly became suspects overnight, their loyalty questioned simply because the ruler's judgment had been poisoned by malicious whispers. One classic tactic, known throughout various royal dynasties, was deliberately encouraging the ruler to indulge excessively in luxury and entertainment. By distracting the king with lavish feasts, endless parties, and alluring temptations, corrupt ministers ensured the ruler neglected state affairs. As the king lost himself in hedonistic pleasures, the traitorous advisor quietly seized more power, manipulating the weakened ruler into making unwise and destructive decisions. Gradually, the king, once wise and morally upright, became isolated and powerless. A mere puppet trapped by the web of deception spun around him. This isn't merely ancient history. Toxic manipulation remains a very real danger in modern life. Imagine your own workplace or social circle. Certain individuals constantly criticize, spread rumors, or plant seeds of doubt about your closest colleagues or friends. Initially, you may dismiss their words, yet, over time, continuous negative whispers begin to affect your perception. You start doubting those who have always supported you, slowly isolating yourself and becoming suspicious, even without concrete proof. This subtle erosion transforms your judgment, affecting your ability to trust and weakening your moral clarity. Psychologists describe this phenomenon as the illusory truth effect, a cognitive bias where repeated false statements gradually begin to feel true, simply due to constant exposure. When you're repeatedly exposed to negativity, suspicion, or criticism about someone or something, your mind subconsciously accepts these claims, even without evidence. This psychological principle is precisely what manipulative advisors historically used against kings. Repeated false accusations eventually appeared truthful, shaking the ruler's trust in loyal, competent ministers. Stoicism provides powerful tools to counteract this toxicity. Marcus Aurelius advised, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." To maintain virtue and clarity, you must carefully guard your mental environment. Actively choosing what you expose yourself to, carefully selecting whom you trust, whose opinions you listen to, and consciously ignoring malicious gossip will safeguard your moral compass. Seneca echoed a similar idea, saying, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." Surround yourself with those who uplift, inspire, and reinforce your virtues. This strategy counteracts toxic influences that attempt to corrupt your judgment or morality. In daily life, this means being mindful of conversations and resisting participation in gossip or negativity. Whenever you sense negativity creeping in, ask yourself, is this conversation making me a better or worse person? Recognize clearly when someone attempts to manipulate your perceptions. Question their motives and actively seek evidence before letting your judgment become clouded. Ultimately, the Stoics remind us that our environment shapes us profoundly, but it doesn't control us entirely. By cultivating awareness, choosing our company wisely, and consciously maintaining clarity and virtue, we prevent negativity from eroding our character. Remember, a single drop of poison can spoil the purest water. Protect your clarity fiercely, guard your virtue vigilantly, and choose always the path of wisdom and strength. Number 7. False confidence. The danger of believing you're beyond mistakes. One of the most dangerous pitfalls on the path of virtue is a false belief in your infallibility, the toxic idea that you simply cannot be wrong. When you convince yourself that you're immune to errors or above accountability, you open the gates to significant mistakes that can tarnish your integrity, harm others, and ultimately distort the very goodness you seek to embody. History repeatedly teaches this painful lesson. Those who see themselves as beyond reproach are precisely the ones most vulnerable to downfall. Consider the ancient stories of kings and emperors who, surrounded by flattery and praise, began to genuinely believe they were gods among men, untouchable, infallible, destined to rule by divine right. Their overconfidence didn't come naturally. It was cultivated by courtiers and advisors who cleverly showered them with hollow compliments and strategic affirmations. These rulers were convinced that they were inherently superior, chosen by fate itself to lead without error. Take, for example, King Louis XVI of France. Born into royalty and repeatedly assured by sycophantic courtiers that he was wiser, stronger, and morally superior simply because of his royal lineage, Louis XVI grew oblivious to the realities around him. Convinced of his divine right, he rejected wise counsel, ignored genuine concerns from his people, and stubbornly believed he knew best. His inflated confidence blinded him to the real suffering of his citizens. Ultimately, his failure to recognize his own fallibility triggered the devastating collapse of his kingdom and led directly to the French Revolution, ending tragically with his execution. Similarly, Chinese history provides ample evidence. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, founder of China's first unified dynasty, was surrounded by ministers who dared not disagree openly. Flattery replaced honest advice. Believing himself infallible, Qin Shi Huang became increasingly ruthless, obsessed with immortality, and paranoid. He punished dissent severely, isolating himself from truth and reality. The result was widespread suffering, resentment, and ultimately a rapid collapse of his dynasty shortly after his death. Yet, this pattern isn't limited to royal courts. It's mirrored vividly in our daily lives. Consider a contemporary workplace scenario. Perhaps you've recently succeeded spectacularly at your job. Praise flows abundantly from colleagues and bosses, inflating your ego. Soon, confidence quietly transforms into arrogance. You no longer listen to criticism, certain your ideas are superior, your decisions impeccable. Inevitably, this overconfidence blinds you to clear warning signs, leading to costly mistakes and fractured relationships. The moment you believe, "I can't possibly be wrong," is precisely the moment you're most vulnerable. Stoicism warns us against exactly this type of dangerous illusion. Marcus Aurelius counseled himself, "Take care not to be Caesarified. Remind yourself daily you are merely human, fallible, and mortal." Aurelius, despite his imperial status, deliberately sought feedback, embracing criticism to remain humble, clear-headed, and virtuous. His example teaches us that recognizing our fallibility isn't weakness, it's profound strength, wisdom, and self-awareness. Epictetus furthers this point. It is impossible for a person to begin to learn what he thinks he already knows. True virtue, according to Stoicism, begins precisely when you recognize your limitations and remain open to correction, improvement, and growth. Arrogance closes your mind, humility opens it. Thus, ask yourself honestly, have you ever believed your position, knowledge, or status made you immune to error? Have you refused advice simply because you felt above correction? Stoicism calls you to recognize that no one, no matter how gifted, noble, or accomplished, is beyond error. It demands humility, openness to criticism, and a willingness to acknowledge mistakes. By understanding and accepting your inherent fallibility, You protect yourself from the subtle dangers of pride. Humility, a core Stoic virtue, allows your goodness and integrity to flourish, safeguarding your character against the destructive illusions of superiority. Remember clearly, true virtue isn't in believing you're incapable of mistakes. It's in recognizing you're human, courageously admitting errors, and growing stronger from them. Choose humility over arrogance, openness over blindness, and virtue over vanity. Number 8. Craving recognition, the silent trap that leads you astray. Deep inside each of us lies an undeniable desire, a longing to be seen, recognized, and praised by others. While seeking approval is natural, unchecked craving for validation often drives even the noblest souls to abandon their core values. When your desire for praise and acceptance eclipses your commitment to doing what's right, you're subtly sliding toward ethical compromise, losing sight of who you truly are. History provides compelling lessons about the dangers of this craving. Take Julius Caesar, for example, a great leader loved by many, yet consumed by an insatiable hunger for recognition. His ambition for applause and status grew so overwhelming that he began crossing ethical boundaries without hesitation. The once admired general, celebrated for his courage and strength, gradually sacrificed the democratic values of Rome for popularity and power. His desire to be seen as heroic ultimately led to a tragic downfall, not because he was inherently evil, but because his desire for approval overwhelmed his moral compass. Similarly, in everyday life, this desire often appears in subtle, seemingly innocent ways. Imagine you're at work, and your colleagues constantly compete for the manager's praise. You find yourself faced with a decision. Do you honestly acknowledge the contributions of a coworker, or subtly downplay their achievements to elevate your own? Perhaps you choose the latter, rationalizing your behavior by thinking, "It's just business, everyone does it," or "I deserve recognition." Before you know it, your desire for approval has quietly compromised your values of fairness and honesty. In relationships, this craving often leads people to compromise their self-respect. Consider someone who endlessly seeks validation from their partner, ignoring their own emotional boundaries. They accept disrespectful behavior or ignore clear red flags, believing external validation outweighs their internal values. Soon enough, they're lost, no longer recognizing themselves in the mirror, all because the need for praise and acceptance overshadowed their self-worth. The Stoics warned strongly against this trap. Marcus Aurelius advised himself daily, "Do not waste time thinking about what others think of you. Be content if you've lived according to your own virtues." Stoicism reminds us that virtue isn't measured by applause or external validation. True virtue shines brightest when no one is watching, rooted deeply within your own conscience. Epictetus similarly advised, "If you desire to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." His words challenge you to embrace authenticity over the comfort of superficial praise. True Stoic wisdom encourages standing by your principles, even when it costs you the admiration of others. By releasing the obsession with external validation, you reclaim your integrity and regain your inner peace. The solution lies in cultivating daily habits of reflection. Consistently ask yourself, am I acting based on genuine virtue or merely chasing applause? When tempted to compromise your values for recognition, pause and ask, will this approval truly satisfy me, or will it cost me something deeper, my integrity, dignity, or self-respect? In short, recognition from others can be comforting, but it's fleeting and uncertain. The Stoics remind us that true satisfaction arises from living in alignment with our deepest values, not from temporary praise. Therefore, guard your heart against the seductive lure of approval. Choose virtue over validation, authenticity over applause. Let your actions be guided not by the desire to impress, but by the quiet strength of your unwavering inner values. Because ultimately, genuine virtue isn't defined by how loudly others applaud you. It's defined by your courage to remain true, even in silence. Number 9. The dangerous illusion. The end justifies the means. Believing that a noble goal excuses unethical actions is a seductive yet dangerous illusion. History repeatedly shows that when good people embrace the philosophy of the end justifies the means, they risk becoming exactly what they initially opposed. Consider the French Revolution, initially driven by ideals of liberty and equality. Revolutionary leaders began with noble intentions, aiming to free citizens from oppression. Yet soon, the pursuit of justice transformed into the violent chaos known as the Reign of Terror. Thousands were executed unjustly, all justified by leaders claiming their brutal methods served a greater good. Their initial virtue became clouded by the illusion that noble ends justified horrific means. On a smaller scale, think of everyday examples like lying to protect someone's feelings. Perhaps you distort the truth to avoid hurting a friend's emotions, telling yourself it's kindness. Yet these small, ethical compromises chip away at your integrity. Eventually, dishonesty becomes easier, slowly reshaping your character until the boundary between right and wrong fades entirely. Stoicism directly counters this mindset. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Stoics understand that morality lies in the actions themselves, not solely in the intended outcomes. Good intentions alone don't redeem unethical behaviors. Therefore, each time you're tempted to rationalize your actions by focusing solely on outcomes, pause and ask yourself honestly, is this action truly aligned with virtue? Or am I justifying wrongdoing by a noble-sounding goal? The Stoic response is clear. No worthy outcome requires compromising your deepest values. Remember, genuine virtue isn't measured merely by outcomes, but by the integrity maintained in pursuit of those outcomes. Never sacrifice what is truly good for an illusion of greatness. The means matter just as much as the ends. Number 10, the poison of comparison. How envy quietly steals your goodness. Comparison is an insidious habit, creeping quietly into your mind, poisoning your spirit and quietly reshaping who you are. Beneath the calm surface of your daily life lies a hidden battle, the silent envy that arises each time you measure yourself against others. This envy slowly grows into resentment, quietly robbing you of your original goodness, turning generosity into bitterness, kindness into selfishness. It begins subtly. Perhaps your friend announces their promotion, new house, or dream vacation on Instagram. You feel a twinge of jealousy, but quickly dismiss it. However, the thought lingers, whispering quietly in your ear, reminding you of what you lack. Soon, your happiness for your friend's success fades, replaced by resentment. You catch yourself thinking, why them and not me? The ancient Greeks understood envy's destructive potential deeply. In mythology, envy drove Hera, queen of the gods, into acts of cruelty and revenge. Despite her immense power and status, she constantly compared herself to others, fueling bitterness that led her astray from virtue. In history, emperors and rulers who once ruled wisely and compassionately lost themselves to jealousy. Emperor Nero of Rome was initially beloved, yet as envy toward more talented artists and respected senators consumed him, kindness gave way to cruelty and paranoia. Jealousy clouded his wisdom, destroying friendships, loyalty, and ultimately his legacy. Modern psychology aligns clearly with this timeless lesson. Studies confirm that frequent social comparisons significantly diminishes your mental well-being, driving anxiety, depression, and resentment. Researcher Leon Festinger famously described this as social comparison theory, noting that continually measuring ourselves against others inevitably leads to dissatisfaction. Jealousy quietly poisons happiness, eroding your inherent capacity for kindness and goodwill, leading to selfish and unethical actions motivated by envy. In your daily life, consider this familiar scenario. You and a coworker both aspire for recognition and promotion. Initially, you're supportive, genuinely wishing each other well, but envy slowly creeps in as your coworker receives praise and recognition you desire. Quietly, envy reshapes your thoughts, making you secretly wish for their failure. Soon, rather than cooperating or helping them succeed, you subtly undermine their efforts, deliberately withholding information, resources, or encouragement. What started as small jealousy quietly grows into actions entirely disconnected from your original, kind-hearted self. Stoicism clearly illuminates the path out of this darkness. Marcus Aurelius wisely counseled, "Do not waste what remains of your life envying others, but use every effort to fulfill the role given to you." Instead of comparing your journey to others, Stoicism encourages gratitude for your unique path. Your responsibility is never to outdo others, but to outgrow your former self. Virtue lies not in comparing, but in embracing your own path and potential fully. Epictetus similarly instructs, "Freedom is secured not by the fulfilling of your desires, but by the removal of desire." By releasing the need to compare, you reclaim your inner peace and generosity. Stoicism reminds you clearly that another person's success does not diminish your own value. Their achievements take nothing from you. Virtue is found in celebrating others genuinely, acknowledging their goodness without feeling diminished by it. So, whenever jealousy whispers quietly into your heart, pause, reflect, and remind yourself firmly: someone else's good fortune isn't your loss, it's an opportunity for your character to shine. Choose gratitude over envy, generosity over bitterness, and kindness over selfishness. Your virtue is defined not by comparison, but by the quiet strength of choosing goodness in a world that too often tempts you to envy. Conclusion. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching this video until the very end. Your commitment to becoming the best possible version of yourself truly matters. Remember, each choice shapes who you become. Make sure it's a choice rooted in virtue and clarity. Now take action. Hit the like button, share this message with your friends, and subscribe to Victory Stoic to always stay aligned with virtue and wisdom. Drop a comment below with our rallying call: I choose virtue. I'd love to hear your own stories and experiences, moments when you faced tough moral decisions or learned valuable lessons. You are never alone in your journey toward mastering your life and choices. Victory Stoic will always be here, standing beside you, supporting your path toward virtue, strength, and lasting clarity.